Welcome to the Prospective Doctor Podcast, brought to you by Med School Coach. Pre-med and medical students alike are encouraged to tune in each week for tips on how to become a strong med school candidate, gain acceptance into the school of your dreams, and succeed on your journey toward residency and becoming a doctor.
Hello, everyone. I know I say this every week, but I absolutely am excited today for our very special guest. We have a lawyer here, and this is definitely a prospective doctor first. So I'm going to have her introduce herself to us, and I will tell you guys that this may be one of the longer episodes that we have because I have a lot of burning questions. So I'll just say that you just take a seat and pull up a sip and maybe a notepad and take some notes. So right now I'll throw it over to Ashley Shaw and let her introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. I am Ashley Shaw. That was quite the introduction. I am a lawyer. More specifically, I am a lawyer that works with physicians. I'm a mom. I'm a wife. I have a beautiful little 3-year-old boy. And I am an entrepreneur, all those beautiful things. But I work as a lawyer for trade that works a lot with physicians. I am the founding attorney and CEO of Contract RX, where we provide contract review and negotiation services to physicians.
I love it. Now, I have a question for you, since there are so many different specialties, we'll call it. I know you guys probably don't call that in law, but we do in medicine. How did you start working with physicians on their contracts?
Yeah, you're right. There are many areas of practice. I think that a lot of people know the criminal law, right? We all watch, Law and Order, and then there's a civil piece where someone's arguing court. I started working with physicians. It's a very simple reason. I have a twin sister that is a physician. And so, I was with her on her journey through medical school, through residency, now as she is out practicing. And there were just various legal hurdles that she had to address along the way. And that's how it just kind of started. It was very personal. I think as, physicians and lawyers are probably very similar in this realm where they come in and help family members with whatever issue is going on. And that's really how I got started working with physicians.
Awesome. What do you love most about working with physicians?
Oh, wow. I love working with physicians because they are very, very responsive and have a very common sense approach. I think that lawyers by nature, we're trained to be adversarial. We're trained to pick apart little small details, look for loopholes. But I find that physicians in general are really good about just being practical. And I think the practice of medicine and learning how to practice medicine lends itself to that. But it just makes it very easier when advising on things, and it makes the application of law to whatever a physician may have to deal with practical when the person applying it is practical. And I find that very refreshing.
That's awesome. It's kind of like we have similar mindsets as professions where we're kind of thinking through processes and what's the best case scenario and what can happen next. So it may be a little different than working with lay people outside of medicine who may need a little more coaching and navigation.
Exactly. Yeah.
Why did you launch Contract RX?
Contract RX, I told you how it started out as me just helping my sister as she became a doctor and is practicing medicine. Well, I found myself kind of helping her doctor friends and more doctor friends. And I realized that there was a real need, that physicians weren't trained on, I think, what I would consider just the basics of the legal pieces that touch medicine, right? And contracts was really one of them. Every doctor is going to sign one at some point in their career. They're not trained on it. And so it's a really big service that physicians need. And I was shocked because I learned that most doctors don't hire lawyers to review their contracts first. They just sign it, they read it, and oftentimes later they then learn something was different or they're burned by the contract. So I launched Contract RX because I saw that there was a need, that this was something that physicians needed. Hospitals and practices have their own team of lawyers that are drafting contracts for them in their best interest. And physicians need that too. And so hence Contract RX was born. I wanted to create a service that was practical, that created more value for physicians and actually coached them and educated them on negotiating and reviewing contracts for themselves.
I love that because I think that you do make a fair point, especially with physicians who are early in their careers about not reviewing their contracts. I will say that I'm a little guilty of that. When we're in medical school, we go through the match process. And for the students who are listening out there who may not have experienced that yet or be at that point in their time, the match process is a component where you interview in your first year at a lot of different residency programs. You go into a computer system and you put your top likes and they put their top likes from the employers, and the computer algorithm kind of chooses it for you, and you kind of don't have a choice. You just go there. So that process continues. And after residency, that's the first time where you have an opportunity to advocate for yourself and you're receiving contracts. So when I was in residency, I know a bunch of my colleagues and I, we just kind of looked at each other and was like, well, what are they offering you? Oh, mine sounds similar, or okay, or let my associate program director or program director look at it. And although that may be great to start those conversations and have it open about compensation and all of those things, physicians aren't trained to review contracts. So
right. Yeah.
know your role.
You're right. I think so here's the thing. I always refer to this because I think most physicians will laugh at this. I remember when I had a really bad headache and I had Googled myself into thinking I was having a stroke. And you could not tell me in that moment that I was not having a stroke. I was 25 years old. Why I would have a stroke, I don't know. I call my sister, who's in residency at the time, and she asked me a simple question about how light was impacting me. And I said, yeah, it's horrible every time I look at light. And she was like, girl, you're having a migraine. This is not a stroke, right? I'm not trained in medicine. The symptoms of a migraine and a stroke are the same to me, right? So physicians shouldn't beat themselves up because they have an employment contract for the first time and they don't know what to do with it. And I think, but I also want to point out one of the great things, not one of the great things, but one of the things I think that that creates that environment is up until you have your first contract, you don't have a lot of choice. You go where you're matched, you go through the program. You really don't have probably a lot of choice in what your program is. You do what is required and get through the process. And so here's the first opportunity where you have a real choice. Mm-hmm. And you're not ready for it because you never really had a choice. You're not trained on it. It's on something that you weren't trained in. And so I think, I would say don't beat yourself up too bad of not knowing what to do in that moment. I think that is just the moment where you recognize, let me get a consult. Yes. Let me consult somebody that is an expert in this and get some help with this.
Absolutely. Now, we spoke a lot about your company, Contract RX. What services does Contract RX offer?
So all of our services are around a contract, right? So we offer a bunch of choices. We offer a contract review service where we review it, we talk about it. We offer a service where we coach you through negotiating it. We offer negotiation services where we negotiate it for you. I know that, and then there's just various small pieces that may come along with after you've signed a contract, like you want to accept a new job, but you don't know if you can because of a non-compete. So we offer services around that. I think the huge part of the services that we offer is unlimited time with a lawyer, and that is something that is the most attractive about the services that we provide in the contract review and negotiation services that we offer, because it gives a physician an opportunity to really ask everything without worrying about the clock. And so that was something that was very central. It was very important to me as I thought about what we would offer along with our services.
Absolutely. And as you mentioned, having a lawyer can be really expensive, which I will admit a lot of my colleagues and friends have discussed over the years, over and over, when they're thinking about making a small leap or suggesting a change. They have that fear in the back of their mind, like, getting a lawyer is going to bankrupt me. And most lawyers charge by the hour. Why do you offer a flat fee?
So, and I think so lawyers are expensive. I have been doing this for a really long time. I remember there are lawyers in New York that charge $1,000 an hour. There are lawyers that charge $500 an hour. That's insane to me. And we offer flat fees for several reasons. One, you shouldn't go bankrupt trying to just understand if your contract is fair and what you deserve. But then two, we want to encourage participation in the process. We want to encourage a process that is collaborative and educating for the physician. If the physician is worried about paying by the hour, those questions that may want to be asked may not be asked. And it could have been an important question. And to be frank, I think that I am a huge proponent of flat fee packages and arrangements. When I was in private practice before I launched this business, it was something that I really advocated for. I don't think the hourly rate encourages the best behavior from lawyers, right? When you have a flat fee and that is what is going to be the payment, it encourages a behavior that is collaborative with the other side. It encourages efficiency, and it keeps lawyers honest. I think it is something that I think should be applicable in all practices of law. But for my company, for Contractor X, we thought it was the best way to go with a flat fee. That way, exactly what you're going to pay. There are no surprises, and that is what you pay, and that's it.
I love that. Now, speaking on contract experience, a lot of employers state that their contracts are standard and they cannot be changed because all other doctors sign them. Is that true?
No, it's not. I think so. Here's the thing. I think there are examples of that in which I have no choice but to accept the terms in front of me. We all do that when we buy a song from iTunes, right? I can't say, hey, iTunes, I don't like this term in the terms of agreement here. You're stuck with what you get. That is absolutely not the case when it comes to employment contracts, and certainly not physician employment contracts. Yes, physicians may sign them, but there are always ways in which you can navigate through them and get necessary changes or clarifications that need to be made. I have yet in my career seen a contract that was perfect and without error, or was provided such clarity that there was no confusion, right? There's always room for improvement. I think recruiters and hiring physicians say that to discourage negotiation. It does, and it can, create a little more work for them. But unfortunately, a lot of physicians believe it, and they just read it themselves and they sign it. I will say this: I have done thousands of physician employment agreements, and there was only one where I could not get one change. One.
That's so powerful, because I remember my first job out of residency. A lot of us were looking at different types. We were looking at private practices. We were looking at big organizations. We were looking at community health centers, hospital centers, all of those kinds of things. And I think almost most of them said that there was no negotiation. So when I spoke with the previous chief medical officer, when I was looking at that employer, and I think I just asked, like, in terms of the salary, it was something very minimal. And I was like, well, could it be? Really nervous. And she gave me some great advice. And she was like, to be honest, we have a certain bucket of money, but she said everything is negotiable. Even if you negotiate $2,000 more, like, you have to ask. And what's the worst case scenario? The worst case is they say no, and you decide if you take that or not. But always.
Right. Yes, that's such a great point. I'm a proponent of a closed mouth does not get fed. Right. If I don't ask, I'm in the position of no. If I ask and then I'm told no, I'm still in the same position. And I think you raised a really good point that I would like to kind of talk about a little bit. Okay. Most physicians, when they get their contract, they're looking at the compensation. They're looking at what is the salary, what is the hourly rate? Do I have a signing bonus? What are these benefits? And that's really great, because you really should know those things and understand those things and advocate the pay that you deserve. I think everyone should. But I think the devil can sometimes be in the details, right? Because you could be arguing about a $30,000 signing bonus and miss the fact that your tail insurance is not paid for unless you stay a certain amount of time. And that is a $30,000 mistake that I've had the client of mine actually made when they came to me. And so I think focusing on compensation is great, but there are parts of a contract that can really impact your compensation, and you don't even know it until it happens. And so those are the things that I think, really reading through, really understanding that, even if you do not want to get changes in your contract, I think really understanding what your contract entails impacts whether you even want to accept the offer.
That makes a lot of sense because there are a lot of variables that you don't think about. Like you think about, like you said, your health insurance, your actual salary, if there's a signing bonus, but there can be so many different things. Even in some organizations, they're offering stock options and things like that. So there may be long-term benefits that you can think about or how they match your 401k.
Yeah. Or will I have to leave this city to accept another job? And when you're early in your career, or if you're moving to a city for family and now you can't work anywhere else in that city, that's tough. And you need to know that.
Yes.
At Med School Coach, we know that getting into medical school is hard. In fact, 60% of pre-meds who apply to medical school don't even get accepted. And if you want to get accepted into a top medical school, it's even harder. It's a complicated process, and even students with great grades and MCAT scores get left out. That's why more students than ever are turning to Med School Coach for admissions advising. Our advisors are all physicians and former admissions committee members, so they know exactly what medical schools are looking for. One-on-one admissions advising from Med School Coach makes all the difference. Our expert team will help you develop a game plan, prepare your application, edit your essays, and coach you for interviews. Every pre-med has a story, and we'll help you tell it so you can stand out from the crowd. Visit us online at medschoolcoach.com and use offer code PODCAST10 to save 10% up to $400 on a Med School Coach admissions advising package. You can achieve your medical school dreams, and Med School Coach can help.
Non-competes are a thing. And they're a hot topic in medicine. I know if you guys are on the social media or talking amongst yourselves as you progress in your career, definitely look into the non-competes.
Non-competes are huge. They are absolutely huge. I mean, I have my own opinions on whether we should even have them, but they are definitely something you should not sleep on.
Absolutely. I also agree. And I'll be very curious to see what happens with upcoming suggestions by the current administration on the non-competes, because they may address them. So who knows, listeners, maybe in a year or two, we'll see.
I wouldn't hold my breath. I think so. Non-competes are tricky because the state can do whatever they want. And what the states do really is all over the place. And an employer is given so much latitude. Courts just give them so much latitude to do it because the answer is always, well, you don't have to accept the offer. And so, but the key thing I think with Biden and what that administration is proposing that I would say don't hold your breath on is that it's focused more so on individuals that earn less than $100,000. And well, I mean, ideally, that's not what you would be earning when you start your first job after residency. So I don't think there's going to be a lot of protections offered there. But unfortunately, I think, I feel like that's a whole other talk, right? I think a lot of people think there will be protections there. And so you may slip up thinking you're protected when you're not. But that is, I have a whole lot of thoughts on non-competes and what we should be doing and what the law is. So
I'd be curious to hear about that. So maybe we'll invite you back if you're willing to talk about that for those who may be interested.
Yeah.
So we did speak a lot about negotiations and reviewing your contract. And as we mentioned, while residency spots may be less negotiable as we go through the match process and things like that, obtaining your first job out of residency is typically a whole new world. What are some of the common mistakes that you see residents make as they transition?
I think as residents transition into employment, their first employment roles, the biggest mistake I see is they don't have someone review the contract and talk through it with them. And they don't learn till later that something is in it that they didn't agree to, or it was more than what they bargained for. The second biggest mistake that I see is that residents don't take advantage of the ability to talk to other doctors that are where they want to be. Physicians are actually really good about sharing information with each other and explaining kind of what to expect in terms of workload, hours, what to expect in terms of the payment of bonuses, and even compensation. Physicians are way more sharing with that information than I think other groups. And one of the mistake that I see is that residents don't take advantage of that. And, I think it could be, you could be shy too. You don't want to ask, you don't want to overstep, but gathering that information is central to you making that decision. The third mistake that I see residents make is buying compensation data from companies. This is a huge mistake. The biggest reason why is the compensation data is never up to date. There are two flaws inherent in it. One, for example, compensation data that's available today is based on from 2019. A whole pandemic happened. An entire pandemic happened between now and then, and that data is unreliable. The second flaw with that data is it's self-reported. So you're the sample size, the accuracy, so even if you can somehow, to me, from my perspective, in my experience, even if you can somehow get the best salary for your specialty in your area, the data that I usually see from those that sell it, no different than if you were to do your own research through Google and resources like salary.com. And so it's a very expensive thing to purchase very early in your career that is not the most accurate. So yeah, those are the three biggest mistakes that I see residents make as they transition out of residency into their first post-residency job.
At Med School Coach, we know that studying for the MCAT exam can be challenging, especially for busy students on the go. That's why our team created MCAT Prep, the only all-encompassing study app built specifically for the MCAT. MCAT Prep by Med School Coach provides student access to extremely high-quality content and a personalized curriculum for free. The app has more than 250 videos, 1,000 flashcards, and 1,000 unique MCAT questions. Plus, MCAT Prep by Med School Coach allows students to create a personalized study schedule and track progress over time. You need every competitive advantage you can get to get into medical school, and now you can put the experts from Med School Coach into your pocket. It's the closest pre-med students can come to a personal tutor without spending a penny. Download MCAT Prep by Med School Coach for free at medschoolcoach.com/MCAT. Or download it directly from the Apple Store or Google Play Store. You can achieve your medical school dreams, and MCAT Prep by Med School Coach can help.
Those are really great points.
Mm-hmm.
So we've talked about the transition. So what are some things that people should watch out for as they start to practice medicine?
I think from a legal perspective, I always tell residents to listen to their gut, to listen to their intuition. If you're being asked to do something and it's making the hair on the back of your neck raise or giving you pause, there's a reason for it. And it's okay to ask a lawyer about it. It's okay to ask more questions about it. I think that when someone is starting to practice medicine, they don't want to rock the boat. The confidence to do that may not necessarily be there. And there's a way to do it in a respectful way that gets you what you need. And so that is a huge washout. I remember on social media, there was a video about a nurse being arrested for not drawing blood when a sheriff asked for it. And I think that during your training, you learn a lot about HIPAA and what you can and cannot share. But I think that when a physician is facing down a sheriff in that moment, they may think that they don't have a choice, and they do. And so I think the biggest watch outs from a legal perspective is really just understanding your patient's rights to privacy, because when physicians get into trouble, that is a big area for them. And so just kind of pausing, asking questions, seeking guidance on it. That is a really huge watch out that I have for anyone starting medicine. I have conversations with my sister as she practices in the ER all the time about this.
That makes a lot of sense. And I love that you talk about trusting your gut and just, you guys were trained on a lot of different things. And if you haven't started your journey or you're at the beginning stages, you will be. So just realize that you know more than you think. And it's okay to continually question things. And if you're uncomfortable with something, it's your license. So
it is your license.
If leadership is saying some things that don't align with your values or what you think you've been trained to do, it's okay to question it, and it's okay to say no.
It is okay. I think, and I think doctors in general are very agreeable. Mm-hmm. I think for me to tell a lawyer, hey, it's okay to say no, yeah, we're trained to say no. to be adversarial, right? To push back, to question. Physicians aren't in that way. Physicians are very curious in a sense of getting to the root cause of the condition that they're treating, but not necessarily pushing back in that way. And it's okay to do it. It is your license, and you're the one with the degree, with the training and the debt to match, right? That says you're the expert. So be that expert.
Absolutely. So we're going to switch gears because, as you mentioned, not only do you practice law and give all the advice and own your own business in terms of Contract RX, but you're an entrepreneur as well. You and your twin sister, who you mentioned is an emergency room physician, started a beauty brand. Can you tell us?
Yes, we did. We started a brand. So I think this is a passion project. We are two Black women that have 4C hair, and we wear it naturally, and we go through all the struggles that you go through with that. And, I have my 3-year-old. We learned very early that he had allergies that prevented me from using the usual things I would use on his hair. And we just looked at the market and thought, well, this is not, they said they're clean. These are clean ingredients. This is not really clean. This is actually highly irritating. And so we took it from an approach of, I think that the skin could be better protected in this hair care space. And so we thought about what we could bring, how we could improve it. My sister, I can't take credit for the formulas at all. It is her science, medicine mind that developed these formulas by looking at reports of dermatologists and cosmetologists about how the skin was actually reacting to find non-irritating formulas. And so we hired a cosmetic chemist and set out to launch a brand. We launched in December of last year. And it has been such an amazing experience because it's to watch something to go from being a passion to an actual business has been so rewarding and so amazing.
That's amazing. What's the name of the brand?
Cane Beauty, CANE Beauty. The Cane stands for something. It's the first initials of myself, my sister, our late mother, and then our late mother's maiden name.
That's awesome. And it seems like you guys have put a lot of research into it, and just shows for those listeners out there that a lot of times there are these conversations about how do you find your passion? The only thing that you can do is what you're trained to do in medicine, but it's so much more. And you have these transferable skills where you can figure out how to work with a chemist and create a whole beauty brand.
Yes.
What is your oyster?
It is. You physicians have learned how to save lives. You can do anything. And I think, I really think it's so important to be connected to your passions right now because physician burnout is so huge. We are still in the middle of this pandemic, and it has been very hard on physicians, and it has really stressed our healthcare system. And so having that connection to a passion, and if you're able to take that passion and create a business from it, like that is so rewarding and can be an amazing outlet for you. I always encourage for people to be entrepreneurial, and it's okay to change your mind if that's what you want to do as well.
Absolutely. So we've had such a great conversation on different aspects of how physicians can better protect themselves as they embark upon employment opportunities. What is the best piece of advice that you've ever received?
I think the best piece of advice I ever received was to be unconventional. And as you are on that unconventional path, it's okay to not have it all figured out. I think that we all know traditional paths, and then we'll, for example, it could be something personal of like, okay, I finish college, I go to medical school, I start a career, and then you have, okay, now get married, have kids, all these traditional notions, I think, can have you making decisions that may not even really be best for you, right? It's okay to pause. It's okay to have an unconventional approach. And it's okay if you don't have it all figured out. Give yourself grace.
Yes, I love that, because if you had it all figured out, what would be the purpose of the journey? Now, I don't typically ask this, but I'm really curious. What's the worst piece of advice you've ever received?
to just suck it up. That, I think, is the worst piece of advice that you can give anyone, or anyone can be told. One, let's not even get into how dismissive it is of the actual concern. But I think that the risk always with just sucking it up is that you could be ignoring a potential opportunity. You could be ignoring what your body is telling you, what your life is telling you. And I will never forget when I was given that piece of advice. I finished law school. I had just started at a really big firm. And I was on the litigation team, and I was miserable. And all of the miserable looking partners were just telling me to suck it up, that this is what it is. And I did not take that advice. That advice had resulted in many of lawyers staying at that firm for decades being unhappy. I made a decision of, well, this is not for me. Let me go in-house. I made my way through the ranks to be a general counsel. And when I got up there, I was like, this is also not for me. I'm not going to suck this up. And I'm going to start my own business. And so I think it is keep your head down, suck it up. Those to me were always the worst pieces of advice. It is okay to put yourself first, have boundaries, and think about what really works for you in your life. I think at a time, especially right now, having gone through COVID, I think a lot of people are taking stock in their lives and what they want their futures to look like. And it's okay if you come to the end of that and say, I'm not sucking it up anymore. I'm going to do this because this makes me happy.
That's great advice, because the only person that really matters is you. You're living the life. So you have to reevaluate and reassess and refocus and define what you want out of life. And it's okay to be going in one direction and you get to that point and you're like, this isn't what I imagined it would be. I want to try something else. You can pivot at any time. So I love that, especially in medicine. We hear that a lot, where it's like just trying to get to that next exam, just trying to get through that next rotation. You can do anything for 4 weeks. You can do everything for 6 weeks. Look, then it's 10 years has passed. You've been doing it. So you have to figure out what brings you joy and what brings you fulfillment.
Yeah.
And your skills, like I mentioned earlier, are definitely transferable. So once you figure out what you do it.
Yes. I remember, this is probably like the worst thing that was ever said to me when I was in corporate. Are you going to cry about it or do something? And I remember I paused and I said, well, first of all, I'm going to do both. I'm going to get out my frustration in tears, and then I'm going to do something. And so that is residency is hard. Medical school is hard. You are doing something that most people cannot do. It's taxing emotionally, physically, and it's okay if you feel like this is horrible and this is awful. And it's okay if you have an untraditional path in attaining your goal as well. So I think the biggest thing, if I can leave the listeners with this, give yourself grace. Just give yourself grace. Don't beat yourself up too badly. You are awesome. You will figure this out. And this is something that most people cannot do. And you are out here doing it and crushing it. So that, if you keep that in mind, that's all you need.
Well, thank you so much for these wonderful pearls of wisdom. I'm going to give you an opportunity to tell everyone goodbye, as well as how they can reach out to you if they have any questions.
Sure. Well, thank you all for listening to me today. I really appreciate it. If you have any questions about contracts, you can always reach me through ContractRx. Our website is mycontractrx.and or the email where you can send questions or comments or anything is info@mycontractrx.com. If you're interested in the beauty brand that we talked about, my passion project, if you want to check out the website, it is canebeauty.com, canebeauty.com. We're on Instagram and Facebook as well. So this has been absolutely amazing. Thank you for the opportunity.
Well, thank you for joining us. And to all the listeners out there, if you haven't, click that subscribe button and I'll be back next week with another guest. Have a great day.
Each episode of the Prospective Doctor podcast is brought to you by Med School Coach. To access articles, videos, webinars, and free tools to help you succeed on your journey toward med school and beyond, visit our website, prospectivedoctor.com. We hope you tune